Hello everyone, and welcome to Dutch Greybeard. Like in my last reading wrap-up video, I must tell you that according to my own standards, I have read very few pages. Normally I read about 2,000 to 2,500 pages each month, but for the months of September and October, I barely managed to read about half that number of pages. The reasons for my slow reading pace may be familiar to you by now, but for those who don't know, I sold my house and started living in a motorhome. That transition took up a lot of my time, thinking space, and attention. Now that I've been stationary in Liberty, the name of my new house on wheels, for a couple of weeks, it looks like the unrest inside of me has vanished, and that I've picked up on my normal reading speed again. So, what did I read during September and October? Altogether, I read or listened to 6 books, with a total page count of 2,912. This will therefore be a conveniently short Treasures of Reading video. On this chart you can see when I read which book and how long each book took me. At the end of this video, I will show you all the books I've read since I started out on this journey in January of 2023. For that, I used 2 different kinds of software, so somewhere from June 2025 onwards, it may look a little bit different. Let's have a look then at the 6 books. Age of War, Legends of the First Empire number 3 by Michael J. Sullivan. I had read the first 2 books in August. There are 6 books in total in this series, but I read the first 3 after having read the first 2 books in Sullivan's Rhaeria Chronicles, as recommended by the author himself. At this point, I have no books by Michael J. Sullivan in my Liberty library, so it will be a while before I continue with reading some of his works. This book, as well as the other 2 in this series, strongly confirmed that my love for the Rhaeria Revelations, the first series I read by this author, was not a one-time occurrence. This writer is gradually becoming one of my favorites in the fantasy genre. The story is well plotted, and the writing is accessible without being overly simple or bland. On the contrary, Sullivan knows how to touch the emotions of his readers with strong dialogue and beautiful scenes. The apotheosis of Age of War didn't grip me as deep as the end of the Revelations did, but perhaps that will happen in the final book in this series. I gave the 436 pages of Age of War 93 points out of 100, which is also the overall rating for the 3 books together. I'm working on a reading experience for all 3 books, so stay tuned for that one. I then finished listening to the second book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series by Matt Diniman, Carl's Doomsday Scenario. I would have stopped listening to this series after book 1, but I had already bought the first 4 books on audio, trusting the many booktubers who absolutely love these books. I'm sorry to say that I don't. Perhaps it is because I'm listening to them on audio and therefore miss essential stuff or details. This book, Carl's Doomsday Scenario, didn't improve my impression of the series, I'm afraid. To me, the story gives me nothing more than fighting, improving the items in the inventory, improving one's level and skills, larded with humor that still has not made me laugh once. And apart from that, nothing of a true story is happening. I am currently listening to book 3, and to me it is more of the same. I gave this one 55 points out of 100. Thankfully, I enjoy the narration enough to keep on listening to it, but I'm quite sure that after book 4, I will say goodbye to Carl and Princess Donut and their dungeon adventures. Because of me moving out of my apartment and transferring to a completely different way of living, I could not concentrate on demanding books. In June, I started reading Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, but had to put it down. Also, I postponed reading the 3rd book in the Lacanius trilogy by James Islington. The books by Michael J. Sullivan were part of my plan to read more accessible books. In that same vein, I picked up Fablehaven by Brandon Mull. Middle grade or YA, I never know exactly in which category books for a younger audience fall, are simply easier reads for me. Within 3 days, I breezed through the 351 pages in which Kendra and her younger brother Seth stay over at the house of their grandparents. They had never been there before, and they hardly know their grandparents. It turns out that there is a good reason why the grandparents have kept themselves sequestered over the years. They are the guardians of Fablehaven, a secret and hidden refuge for mystical creatures. Kendra and Seth get caught up in a huge adventure with real dangers and high stakes. I gave Fablehaven 86 points out of 100. This is exactly the kind of book that could turn younger people into readers for life. Inevitably, for any middle grade book, the story and its characters don't go as deep as an adult book would, but that was just what I needed. I enjoyed it so much that I immediately picked up the second book in the series. Rise of the Evening Star has 431 pages, which I again devoured in 3 days' time. It was wonderful to discover step by step how Kendra develops. She played a pivotal role in the first book and was rewarded for that in a special way by the many fairies that live in Fablehaven. With each major incident, she finds new abilities that belong to the so-called fairy kind. This is something that hasn't happened to a human in more than 1,000 years. Someone explains this to her. The fairies have changed you, adopted you, infused you with their magic. A semblance of the magical energy that naturally dwells in them now dwells in you. For instance, Kendra doesn't need her daily ration of milk from a magical cow to be able to see all the fairy creatures. Also, she somehow understands and can speak all the languages of the many mystical species. Again, the siblings get caught up in an all-or-nothing adventure, with Seth being the main hero this time. Highly entertaining, although a little less surprising than the first book. I gave Rise of the Evening Star 82 points out of 100. In my Liberty library, I only have the third book, Grip of the Shadow Plague, available, but I'm quite sure that one will be read very soon. I recently put out my detailed reading experience video of All Better Now by Neal Shusterman, so for this video I will be brief. It was a completely unexpected read and I liked it very much. I read this one during our holidays in Norway, and it took me some 10 days to read it. The story about a new pandemic from a virus called Crown Royale, which divides the world into two opposing camps, is gripping and provides readers with a lot of food for thought. The prose is outstanding, and although the book is dubbed as a YA thriller, I find that it neither belongs to the YA segment of books nor to the genre of thrillers. People who recover from Crown Royale experience a strange effect: utter contentment. For what seems to be for an indefinite time, the stress, greed, and misery that used to weigh these people down are gone. What this does to society and the world is mind-boggling. The story follows several characters in both camps, which culminates in a surprising ending with a huge cliffhanger at the end. I gave All Better Now 89 points out of 100. The book offers an incredible creative journey across morality, politics, the human condition, and ethics. The writing is superb, and I'm fully sold on the imaginative powers of this writer. As mentioned already, I first picked up Ship of Magic, book number 1 in Robin Hobb's Life Ship Traders trilogy at the beginning of June in this year. My apartment had just gone up for sale, and I had recently unhauled about 1,400 books. I was searching almost frantically for the right motorhome I was going to move into. They were hectic times, to say the least, and within 15 pages, I realized that I could not find the focus this book deserves, so I put it aside for quieter times. During the final days of my holiday to Norway, on October 4, I finally had enough headspace to really start reading this book. This time, after the prologue and the first chapter, I was sold. The fact that I spent 23 days with this book has everything to do with my life changes and nothing with the quality of this book. I will make a separate video on this one, so again, I'll be brief here. It is extremely close to a genuine 5-star. Hobb's writing simply is some of the very best in the fantasy genre. Many creative descriptions like this one. About them, the trees dripped the second-hand rain of last night's storm. Who comes up with something like second-hand rain? And there is so much emotion in this story. People with completely opposite views clash and influence one another. Emotions rise to extremely high levels at many points in the story. I don't want to spoil things, but one heartbreaking scene after another gave me the feeling that I was on an emotional roller coaster ride. Hobb's prose is so artful. Take, for instance, this beautiful description of the art of Amber, the woodcarver. The leaping dolphin bead could only have been a dolphin. There was no berry, no cat, no apple hiding in that bit of wood. Only the dolphin had been there, and only Amber could have found it and brought it out of concealment. These words, of course, are strongly reminiscent of the famous words ascribed to the sculptor Michelangelo. The sculpture is already complete within the marble block before I start my work. It's already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. Hobb's much-praised character work is brilliantly illustrated by Malta, Keffria's daughter. Her inner monologues, daydreaming, and dialogues with Ronica, her grandmother, and her mother paint a complete picture of her spoiled but deviously manipulative character. Even though her thoughts and actions couldn't be more distant from me, I fully understood her point of view. I said I would keep it brief. 94 points out of 100. A masterfully written book, and I'm quite sure I will like the other two in the series equally. Those were the 6 books I read these past 2 months. If I take Dungeon Crawler Carl out of the equation, my average score would be almost 89 points out of 100. I may not have read much, but they were good reads. Did you read any of these books, and how did you experience them? Please let me know in the comments. The most demanding days and weeks of the transition into my new life seem to be behind me right now. But like always, I need to remind myself at times that the true joy of reading lies not in quantity, but in quality. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at Dutch Greybeard.